Namo Namaha Bhaktam Sarvesham Hartam Swagatam. Welcome back to the channel Sanskrit Sopanam. I hope you are doing great. I'm also good. And moving ahead in our Learning Sanskrit through Gita series, today we'll be covering the 56th shloka from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And again, in the previous shloka, Krishna has started to expound on who is a Sthita Prajna person, who is a person who has a firm intellect and a person who has a well-established wisdom. So, for such a Sthit Prajna person, Arjuna asked the question in the 54th shloka. In the 55th shloka, in the previous shloka onwards, Krishna has now expounded on who is a Sthit Prajna person. So, what we can learn from these shlokas and what we can learn from Sanskrit point of view, all this we will see. So, without wasting any more time, let's quickly dive in today's video. Okay, so this is the 56th shloka. Let me go through the shloka once. Dukkheshvanu dvignamanaha sukheshu vigatasprahaha Vitaraga bhayakrodhaha sthitadhira muniruchyate. Okay, so this is our original. This is the Mula Shloka and this is the Sandhi Vichcheda version of the same Shloka. So what all Sandhis we can spot here? So if you see these words, Dukkheshu and Anudvigna Manaha. Okay, see, Anudvigna Manaha, this entire is a same word. It is a single word. It is a compound word. It is a samasa. So even though the samasa have multiple words, but when we do the Vichcheda, we just separate them using this hyphen. Okay, so that we know that even though they are individual words, but they still form a single word, that is a samasa, a compound word. Okay, so the two words that we are dealing with is Dukkheshu and Anudvigna Manaha. And in between these two words, what Sandhi is this? So this is a Yana Sandhi, due to which this U, this Ukara, this Swara is getting replaced by a Va. This is the Yana Sandhi. So, Dukkheshu Anudvigna Manaha, this is combining as Dukkheshwa Anudvigna Manaha. Okay, in place of U, you are getting a Va, which is further combining with the following word Anudvigna Manaha. So, Dukkheshwa Anudvigna Manaha. That is what you see in the Mula Shloka. Okay, so this is due to the Yana Sandhi. And if you move on, so here we can spot a Sandhi between these two words, Sthitadhihi and Munihi. And what Sandhi is this? So this is a Rutva Sandhi. It is a Visarga Sandhi, which is a Rutva Sandhi, that the Visarga is getting replaced by a Rakara. So Sthitadhihi and Munihi, they combine as Sthitadhira Muni. Okay, in place of Visarga, you get a Rakara. So Sthitadhira Munihi. Actually, it is Sthitadhira Munihi. So this is due to the Rutva Sandhi. And then further, there is also a Sandhi between Munihi and Uchyate. And this is the same Rutva Sandhi. Okay, so the same thing as we saw here, Sthitadhihi and Munihi, that the Visarga is getting replaced by a Ra. So Munihi Uchyate becomes Muniruchyate. So in together, all these three words, Sthitadhihi, Munihi, Uchyate, they combine together as such, Sthitadhira Muniruchyate. And as usual, all the Sandhi details and all the word by word breakdown will be in the PDF sheet that you can download from the link in the description box. Now we will move on and start the decoding of the shloka. So in this shloka, we only have one Kriya Pada, which is this Uchyate. And Uchyate, this basically translates as is said to be. Okay, see, this Uchyate, this Kriya Pada is coming from Vachadhatu. And this Vachadhatu in Lat Lakara, that is present tense, in Prathama Purusha, that is, we are talking about some third person. And Ekvachanam. Okay, so in these properties, Vachadhatu generally translates as he or she says or he or she speaks. But again, here this form, this is a Karmani Prayoga form. Okay, whenever we have a sentence in passive voice, whenever we have a sentence in Karmani Prayoga, we use the Karmani form of Kriya. So this Uchyate is the Karmani form of Kriya. And that is why we translate as is said to be. Okay, that is the proper translation. It is the same thing that a boy sees, that is active voice, but something is seen by the boy, that is passive voice. So is seen is the Karmani form. So similarly, Vachadhatu in Kartari Prayoga translates as some third person speaks or says, but in Karmani Prayoga, this Uchyate translates as something is said to be. Okay, that is how we translate it. Okay, it is a Karmani form of Kriya. And of course, we have seen the same Kriya Pada in the previous shloka. So again, no point of repeating that. The question is, Kaha Uchyate? So see here, this is the implicit use of Manushyaha. That Manushyaha, this is not explicitly mentioned in the shloka. But again, Krishna, what he is giving the definition of a Sthit Prajna person. So he is talking about in that sense, that a person who does this is said to be a Sthit Prajna person. So to show that I am using this adhyaharaha, I am using this implicit word that manushyaha uchyate. A person is said to be. So Manushyaha Uchyate, a person is said to be. But this is the important part, because this is given in the shloka, that Kidrishaha Manushyaha, that what kind of a person is said to be whatever Krishna is going to expound. So in order to explain the characteristic of a Sthit Prajna person, Krishna is making this statement that Vit Raga Bhaya Krodha Manushyaha Uchyate. So this entire pada is a samasa. It is a samast pada which is being used as a adjective for describing a certain kind of person. Okay, and now to understand this samasa, in this samasa we can spot these padas: Vita, Raga, Bhaya and Krodha. See, Vita basically means something that is gone, something that is extinguished, something that has disappeared. That is this Vita. This Vita essentially applies to all these three qualities: Raga, Bhaya, Krodha. Okay, so first of all, we are taking these three qualities together. So, what is the Vigraha we can use? Ragaha cha, Bhayam cha, Krodha cha, etesham samaharaha. Samaharaha basically means grouping, that we are taking 2, 3, 4 multiple items and we are grouping them together. So when we do this Vigraha Vakyam, Ragaha cha, Bhayam cha, Krodha cha, etesham samaharaha, then we combine them together into a samast padam, Raga Bhaya Krodham. Okay, this is the samast padam we get, Raga Bhaya Krodham. Basically, we have taken three qualities and we have grouped them together, Raga Bhaya Krodham. And then with this samasa, what we are trying to say? We are trying to say Vitam Raga Bhaya Krodham Yasmat Saha Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. Yasmat, one from whom Raga Bhaya Krodham, these three things, Vitam, have disappeared. So Vitam Raga Bhaya Krodham Yasmat Saha Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. That such a person is called Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. So the meaning is one from whom Raga, that is attachment, Bhaya, that is fear, Krodha, that is anger, has disappeared. So basically one who remains free from attachment, from fear and from anger. Such a person can be called as Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha Manushyaha. Okay, so I hope this entire samast padam, this is amply clear. Okay, Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. First of all, there are three qualities, Raga, Bhaya, Krodha, that we are talking about. So we group them together into a samasa. Ragaha cha, Bhayam cha, Krodha cha, etesham samaraha, eti Raga Bhaya Krodham. Okay, this is a Dvandva samasa. This is a Samahara Dvandva samasa. And then what we are trying to say is Vitam Raga Bhaya Krodham Yasmat, one from whom these three things, Raga Bhaya Krodham, are Vitam, have disappeared. So such a person is called Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. Okay, so that another part of samasa is the Bahuvrihi samasa. Okay, so Krishna has clearly laid out what kind of a person, what kind of a Manushya Krishna is talking about. Okay, such a Manushya, such a person is said to be. That is what he is laying the grounds for. But then he mentions further qualities of such a person. Now he is saying Dukkheshu Anudvigna Manaha. Okay, so you see this pada Anudvigna Manaha. So this is also a samasa. And in this samasa, you can spot these two padas, Anudvigna and Manas. Okay, Manas basically means mind. Mind is loosely used in the sense of mind, intellect, intelligence, in all that sense. Contextually, we see what fits better. But anyways, Manas is generally translated as mind. Okay, the common translation, Anudvigna. So Anudvigna basically means one who is undisturbed, one who is calm. See, this Anudvigna, this itself is a samasa. Okay, see, whenever we negate any word, so that is also a samasa, that is a nanya samasa. The pada is Udvigna, that is the pada, Udvigna. Udvigna basically means one who is anxious, one who is disturbed. So that is Udvigna. And if I try to negate it, so I will add this an, right? So the word becomes Anudvigna. So Anudvigna basically means the opposite of Udvigna. Udvigna, someone who is anxious. So Anudvigna, someone who is calm, someone who is serene, someone who is undisturbed. Okay, basically na udvigna iti anudvigna. That is this Vigraha Vakyam of this samast padam, Anudvigna. And then with this pada, what we are trying to say? We are trying to say Anudvignam manaha yasya. That yasya, one whose manaha, one whose mind is Anudvignam, one whose mind is undisturbed. Or basically one who remains undisturbed in that sense. So Anudvignam manaha yasya, such a person is called Anudvigna manaha. Okay, that is the Prathama Vibhakti Ekvachanam form. The Pratipadika is Anudvigna manas. If we are using it for a Pullinga, so Prathama Vibhakti is like, what you say, it is a Sakaranta Shabdanu Anudvigna manas. So you can take the reference word chandramas, you can take the reference word vedhas. All these are sakaranta pullinga shabda. So in that sense, if you use this word anudvigna manas, so the prathama vibhakti ekvachanam form is anudvigna manaha. That is what you see here. Just like chandramas, chandramaha, vedhas, vedhaha, nachiketas, nachiketaha. So that is what we are doing here. It is prathama vibhakti ekvachanam in pullinga gender. Because again, we are talking about a general manushya person. So that is pullinga. So we are just taking, in a general sense, we are taking all the shabdas as pullinga. Okay, so I hope this entire samasa structure is also clear. And what we are saying is dukkheshu anudvigna manaha. That one whose mind remains undisturbed, anudvigna manaha, where dukkheshu, in times of adversity. Dukkheshu, this is coming from dukkha, pratipadika. Dukkha means adversity or sorrow, and dukkheshu, this is the saptami vibhakti and bahuvachanam. So saptami vibhakti bahuvachanam, in sorrows, in times of adversity. Okay, so dukkheshu anudvigna manaha, one whose mind remains undisturbed, one who remains calm, one who remains serene in sorrows, in times of adversity. So in all, what kind of person we are dealing with? Krishna is saying one whose mind remains undisturbed in times of adversity and one who remains free from attachment, fear and anger. Such a person is said to be uchyate. Okay, that is what we have so far. But still, Krishna has one more adjective for such a person. And now Krishna says, Sukheshu vigatas prahaha. Okay, so now see, earlier he talked about dukkheshu in times of adversity. Now he is talking about sukheshu in times of prosperity. Okay, that is this sukheshu coming from sukha, pratipadika, again in saptami vibhakti bahuvachanam, sukheshu, in prosperity, in times of prosperity. In that sense, the adjective is vigatas prahaha. And vigatas prahaha, this is also a samasa, this is also a samastapada. In this you can spot these two words, vigata and spriha. Vigata is essentially same as this vita. Vigata also means something that is gone, something that is extinguished, something that has disappeared. That is that vigata. And what is this spriha? So spriha is basically ichha, that is desire. Okay, that is this spriha. Okay, and with this samastpadam, what we are trying to say? We are trying to say is vigataha sprihaha yasmat. Yasmat, one from whom sprihaha, the desires have vigataha, have disappeared. So vigataha sprihaha yasmat. Saha, such a person is called vigata sprihaha. That one from whom desires have extinguished, or basically one who remains desireless, one who remains unattached. And when? So sukheshu vigata sprihaha. That one who remains desireless or unattached in times of prosperity. So I hope these samastapada and this meaning is also clear. Okay, and up until this point, Krishna is trying to give a characteristic feature. He is trying to define a sthita prajna person. And for that, he is giving a definition of a person. And see what kind of person he is stating. That a person who remains free from attachment, fear and anger, a person whose mind remains undisturbed in times of adversity, and person who remains desireless or unattached in times of prosperity. Such a person uchyate, such a person is said to be, and such a person is said to be what? So munihi uchyate, that such a person is said to be munihi. Such a person is said to be a sage. Okay, munihi, this is basically coming from muni pratipadika. This is munihi is again the prathama vibhakti ekvachanam form munihi. Okay, and the meaning is a sage. So that is whom we call a sage, a muni. Okay, a highly spiritually evolved person. Okay, and moving on, he uses a familiar adjective for a muni, for a sage, for a highly evolved person. What is that adjective? Sthitadhihi. This adjective we have seen in the previous shloka already. That what is this sthitadhihi? So sthitadhihi yasya. Yasya, one whose dhihi, one whose intellect, one whose wisdom remains sthita, remains firm, remains well established. So sthitadhihi yasya. Such a person is called sthitadhihi. Okay, basically one of undiluted and firm mind. Okay, you call it mind, you call it intellect, whatever, but the meaning is essentially same. That a person whose intellect, whose mind remains firm, remains well established. Okay, you call it sthitadhihi, you call it sthita prajna person, same thing. Okay, but I hope all these words, all these padas are clear. Let us see the anvaya along with the anuvada. Okay, so the context is same, that he is giving a characteristic feature of a sthita prajna person, of a person who has a firm intellect and firm wisdom. So while describing such a manushya, while describing such a person, he says, Dukkheshu anudvigna manaha, that one whose mind, manaha, remains undisturbed and unfrightened, that is anudvigna. So anudvigna manaha, a person whose mind remains undisturbed and unfrightened, dukkheshu, in times of adversity, and who is vigata spraha, and who remains unattached or who remains desireless during the times of prosperity, sukheshu. And so who is vitaraga bhaya krodha, and so who remains free from attachment, that is raga, fear, that is bhaya, and anger, that is krodha. Such a manushya, such a person, stitadhihi munihi uchyate, that such a person is said to be a sage with an undiluted and firm mind. Okay, that is the entire translation of the shloka. Okay, and with this again, Krishna is giving us some unparalleled wisdom here. Okay, that to listen to it is already so fortunate, but to be able to follow it, to be able to slowly and steadily grasp it and make it our living reality, it is a bliss in itself. And what he is saying in the earlier shloka, already he gave a perfect definition. He said that who is a person of a steady wisdom, who is a sthit prajna person, that prajahati sarvan kaman, that one who has what you said, abandoned all the desires. But those desires are not abandoned due to a negative or due to a pessimistic outlook towards life. No, those desires are abandoned because that person is atmanyeva atmana tushtaha, that person has discovered an ultimate bliss, an unlimited bliss within himself, which comes from that self-realization, that atma sakshatkar of that Ishwar Tattva within. So he already gave a perfect definition of a sthit prajna person, but now in the shloka he is giving more of a practical definition to it, and where he is clearly telling us three qualities. There are so many qualities, so many vices that we need to get rid of, but Krishna is again hand holding us to focus our attention on these three qualities. What are the three qualities? Raga, that is attachment; bhaya, that is fear; and krodha, that is anger. And he is saying that if you are to be considered as a sthita prajna person, you have to get rid of these things, because a manushya who is called a sage, who is called a munihi, such a manushya is vitaraga bhaya krodha. Such a manushya is one who remains free from all these three negative vices, and they have such a significance on it. See, this raga, what is this raga? What is this? Raga is basically attachment. When we are too much attached to whatever, some object, that object might be a person, we are too much attached to that person. That object might be our financial status, that we are too much attached to our wealth, our financial status. That object can be our position in the company, in the job we are working in. That is attachment. And then that attachment can also be to the popularity, to the fame that we might have received in the past. So all these are attachment. So million of things we can get attached to, but whenever we get attached to something, that attachment brings this bhaya, bring this fear, because up until we have attained that object of our attachment, there is a fear that we might never attain it. So there is that bhaya. But the moment we have attained it, there is still that fear that we might now lose it. So up until the point you have not attained it, and after you have attained it, all through this point there is that fear, because this fear is the direct result of this attachment, of this raga. So whenever there is a raga, that fear is sure to follow it, a fear of not attaining it, and once you have attained it, the fear of losing it. Okay, so raga and then bhaya. And then what is krodha? Krodha is whenever someone or something comes in between the object of your attachment. Whenever something comes in between you and the object of your attachment, that creates anger, that creates krodha. And again, it happens both the ways, that up until the point you have attained that object, whenever some object, some obstacle comes, you become angry, you become anger, that anger arises in you. And same thing happens once you have attained that also, that whenever you have attained something, now whenever comes in between you, that fear that you might lose it, that fear that that person or that thing might take that object away from you, that again creates an anger. So you see, all this bhaya and krodha, they are just a direct outcome of raga, of attachment. And that is why in the shloka we have these three in this order: raga, bhaya, krodha. Because this is how it happens, that first you get this raga, you get an attachment. Due to that attachment, you get this bhaya, you get this fear. And whenever there is an obstacle to it, you get krodha, you get anger. Okay, and again, Krishna is giving such a lofty definition of us, such an ideal person, that again, not possible for us to immediately become like that, but at least someone is telling us these things, and at least now we know. Now we can be conscious with our efforts that whenever we are operating in this world, we can at least be conscious that these three attributes, Raga, Bhaya, Krodha, we have to be sure. Because Krishna is telling us that up until we get rid of these things, we are not going to advance in our spiritual journey. Okay, we are not going to get that ultimate bliss that such a person gets. Okay, so such kind of beautiful, what you say, that only this portion of Bhagavad Gita is enough to set us right. Only this portion of Bhagavad Gita is enough to meditate and to practice throughout our life. If we are able to understand and apply this in our day-to-day life, what joy it can bring to us. And again, only when we are joyous, only when we are truly happy, then we can make the world happy, then we can make the world joyous. So that is how these Bhagavad Gita, these verses work. I hope again, all these gems, all this, there is so much more to it that cannot be expressed in such short videos, but all of you guys, I'm sure, are following it with some commentaries. So anyways, all these acharyas, all these gurus have done that work for us, that they have beautifully given commentaries on it, so that we can learn from these verses, we can apply them in our life, so that we can have a joyous life and we can make the world around us a better place to live in. Okay, I hope all the padas, all the words, they were clear. Again, the same thing will continue in the further shlokas. In case I missed out anything grammatically, vocabulary wise, so it is there in the PDF sheet that you can download from the link in the description box. I will now take leave. I'll meet you in another video with another shloka. Until then, stay awesome, stay happy, keep learning Sanskrit. Vayam punah milamaha. Dhanyavad.